Thank you, Chandrajit, and let me also add my welcome to all of you. What I want to do is, set the context over maybe 5-10 minutes, and then take you through the theme. Based on the context, what do we see as the theme for 2013-2014? So, as I said, I'll take you through the context, the state of the economy, and talk about the theme for 2013-2014. The GDP growth did not recover as expected and hit a decadal low of 5% in 2012-2013. From a 9.8% in 2010-11, we've come down to a 5% actually here now. The growth rate for industry, which includes mining, manufacturing, utilities, and construction at 3.1% is a cause for concern. Manufacturing growth has plummeted to as low as 1.9%. Services too has moderated to a growth rate of 6.6% in line with industrial slowdown. The investment GDP ratio, which had reached a peak of 38% in 2007-2008, has moderated to 35%. Consumption growth has also moderated for the first time in many years. This calls for a sharper reduction in interest rate. Although the WPI inflation has moderated, the CPI inflation remains high, and food prices are a key threat. In fact, the WPI inflation is 5.96%, so the moderation actually continues. CII has maintained that the supply side needs to be eased for inflation to be moderated. Raising interest rates have been counterproductive as it has discouraged investment. CII has been talking about debottlenecking the supply side and has also talked about reducing interest rates. Fiscal consolidation will take place gradually over the next few years. The challenge is to reduce the deficit without cutting capital spending, which would have a negative impact on economic revival. Spending on subsidies will continue to remain high. So the current account deficit has continued to increase due to declining exports, even as imports on account of oil, gold, and coal continue to rise. The current account deficit as a percentage of GDP at 5.4% during April to December is very worrying. It has made us dependent on capital inflows. Even though capital inflows have been adequate till now, they could reverse at any time. This would lead to currency depreciation and a depletion of our foreign exchange reserves. So there is a need to look at the current account deficit and how we address that. With interest rate cycle turning, some recovery in capital formation and GDP growth rate is likely in 2013-14. We expect a base case of 6.2% growth, but it could range from 6.06% to 6.4%. Industrial growth is likely to recover given the low base of the previous year, but not likely to grow more than 5 to 5.5%. Growth in services sector will recover, but not likely to accelerate beyond 7.2 to 7.5%. Agriculture will continue to grow at a growth rate of 2.5% to 3.5%. So reviving an economy is an imperative given that higher growth is required to meet the aspirations of the people of India. Social programs to achieve more inclusive growth can be sustained only if greater revenue is generated. We believe that 6 to 6.4% is possible next year. Over the next 3 to 5 years, we can get back to 8 to 9%. But we want to see how can we accelerate this. Can we get this done faster? Can we get to 8% growth in 2 years? And that's what we have chosen as the theme. So summing up, actually, domestic conditions are challenging and prevented the recovery that was expected at the beginning of the year. We need to build resilience at home by restoring macroeconomic balance, by reducing the twin deficits. Also, we have ahead of us the Herculean task of reviving economic growth. This is essential to meet the aspirations, as I said, of $1 billion plus, and to make the transition to a developed nation, which requires sustained high rates of equitable growth with development. Hence, the major focus for the year is on accelerating economic growth through innovation, transformation, inclusion, and governance. And I'll take you through each one. So the theme, as I said, is accelerating economic growth. Can we achieve 8%, 9% growth faster? So under this theme, we would focus on measures to accelerate economic growth, the 4 key enablers for growth: reforms and governance, inclusive growth and affirmative action, innovation, entrepreneurship and growth of SMEs, and transformation of sectors. These are the pillars. And to complete the picture, we need to look at global engagement and sustainability. So the theme is accelerate economic growth. There are 4 pillars of this: reforms and governance, inclusive growth and affirmative action, innovation, entrepreneurship, growth of MSMEs, transformation of sectors, and we will stay engaged with our partners around the world, and sustainability will also be an important theme for CII. Now, I will take you through each one of those in detail. So when I look at accelerating economic growth, it is important to lift the economic growth to 8 to 9% at the earliest. One crucial ingredient for growth is kickstarting investment and consumption demand. The Reserve Bank of India also needs to work in tandem with the government in boosting growth by easing interest rates over a period by at least 100 basis points in the current fiscal itself. Reviving stalled projects is a critical precursor for facilitating higher overall investment. While infrastructure investment has gained significant momentum over the last few years, the deficit continues to remain large. The Cabinet Committee on Investment, CCI, should aim for making a repository of the top 50 stalled projects in terms of investment incurred and go for the revival on a priority basis. India ranks at a low of 132 among 185 global economies in terms of ease of doing business. This needs to change if India has to catapult itself to the high growth trajectory. Streamlining procedural reforms is the first step in this direction and is critical. In fact, we need to actually benchmark ourselves and set a target and reduce this number as quickly as possible. Even seeing whether we can get to the top quartile as quickly as possible. There is a need to provide a special emphasis on increasing investor confidence so as to, of course, increase investments. For this, the momentum behind the recent government efforts on fiscal consolidation and economic reforms should continue. While the government has recently opened up several new sectors for FDI, foreign direct investment, some crucial sectors such as banking, insurance still need to be opened up. FDI is the most stable form of capital flows and is required for financing our current account deficit. Entrepreneurship needs to be encouraged, and an ecosystem that facilitates more startups should be created. Finally, India will also have to address the critical issue of creating jobs and preparing its youth to participate in its economic growth. On the taxation front, there is a need for several key reforms, starting with the implementation of GST. CII intends to work closely with the Empowered Committee of State Finance Ministers on this important issue. We at CII are also hoping that the amended constitutional bill will be placed in the Parliament in the monsoon session of 2013 after receipt of the recommendations of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Finance. In addition, we will also continue with our advocacy efforts on direct tax code. So this actually is very, very important. GST, implementation of GST is expected to increase the GDP growth by around 1 to 1.5%. Some of the major reforms lie in the domain of the states. These second-generation reforms are pivotal for revival of growth. Some of the major state-level reforms that CII will advocate are related to agriculture, power, land acquisition, and doing business reforms related to procedural issues and clearance issues faced in setting up new businesses. We continue our dialogue with the state governments on distribution reforms with a focus on public-private partnership models and reduction in aggregate technical and commercial losses. In the area of agriculture, it is critical to incentivize the implementation of the Model APMC Act by denotifying fruits, vegetables, and other perishables from the APMC list. We will discuss this later when I talk about this issue later. States must also facilitate reforms on land, such as long-term land leasing of agricultural land for cultivation, with farmers still retaining their ownership rights. As I mentioned earlier, an important area of reform is GST. It is important for all states to work towards early implementation of GST. Another major issue faced at the states level are related to approvals and clearances. Procedural reforms, therefore, become imperative to make it easier to do business in the state. CII this year will be setting up a central task force to monitor state-level reforms, to monitor and coordinate the state-level reforms. We have experienced in the recent past a slowdown in legislative action and executive decision. This has led to delays in project implementation, which not only brings in investment into the economy, but also creates demand for several products. For instance, implementing infrastructure projects in general would create demand for more than 100 plus industries. Hence, CII agenda for action this year will focus on some of the major areas of governance that would develop future decision-making capabilities, enable efficient functioning of markets, especially in the resources sector, and bring in efficacy of public expenditure. CII has released its report on suggested electoral reforms. There is a need to implement and enforce immediately the recommendations of the Election Commission, Law Commission, and Judiciary in respect of candidates' disqualification at entry threshold. The government would do well to encourage serious candidates, fast-track legal proceedings, revise asset disclosure norms, impose democracy cess for funding political parties, incentivize political funds, revise election expenditure limit, ensure transparency of accounts, and hold elections simultaneously for both parliament and state assemblies. There is a set of reforms around elections and electoral reforms which CII has put together and submitted to the government. And of course, this becomes important this year. Resources are scarce and efficient allocation of resources is an absolute necessity. Hence, having a regulatory structure for critical resource structures would help with respect to pricing, allocation, licensing, and tariffs. CII will advocate for setting up independent regulatory authorities in sectors such as coal, real estate, health, etc. CII was happy to note the announcement of setting up an independent regulatory authority for the road sector in this year's budget. There is also a need to improve the mechanism for center-state discussions. The manufacturing sector has been witnessing slow and declining growth. The cumulative growth between April 2012 and January 2013 stood at 1%, marking the sluggish growth momentum in the industry. The contraction in investment has impacted capacity creation in this sector. With changing global realities and rising uncertainties, the manufacturing sector will need to be the key driver of employment creation over the next decade, in contrast to the current employment of only 12% of India's working population. Faster growth in manufacturing will actually create jobs around the manufacturing sector, in the supply chain area, in retail, etc. The whole economic activity around manufacturing will create these jobs. It's clear that for the sector to regain its growth trajectory and become the engine for economic growth, the reforms such as national manufacturing policy, aligning national and state manufacturing needs, simplifying business regulations, etc., need to be pushed and implemented without delay. There's a need to ensure stakeholder convergence on two critical legislation, as the Land Acquisition and Rehabilitation Resettlement Bill, that's one. Second is the Mining and Minerals Development Regulation Amendment Act. I would again like to reiterate that the business regulatory framework needs to be streamlined to simplify the regulatory system, ensure fair competition among players, and reduce the cost of compliance of doing business in the country. Finally, the simplification of labor laws to facilitate industrial restructuring and rationalization of inspections will also strengthen the growth momentum of this sector. In the coming years, CII will work towards aligning the national and state priorities in manufacturing and creating awareness of the key policy interventions made in the national manufacturing policy. CII will work closely with government, especially in the resource-endowed states, to establish new NIMZs, National Investment Zones, actually, manufacturing zones. CII will work closely with various government departments to ensure speedy approvals and clearances for large-scale manufacturing projects. It is important for these projects to be implemented urgently to revive investment cycle. Here, I would like to suggest that the Cabinet Committee on Investments could also consider reviewing projects below 1,000 crore as well to boost investment and growth. I propose to create a task force that will make recommendations for simplifying the regulations. These steps would also aim to improve India's global position and overall ranking in terms of World Bank's ease of doing business ranking. Value addition and depth is another important aspect that needs to be focused on. I would like to focus on key sectors such as electronics, chemicals, as mentioned in the 12th plan document. For manufacturing growth, it is essential to have an ecosystem of R&D and innovation. Academic institutions play an important role in R&D and innovation. CII will work towards creating these linkages. These linkages would also help in attracting the right talent for the manufacturing sector, which does not seem to be a career option today. FTAs are an important aspect in Indian trade, but it is important to assess its impact on the domestic industry, keeping in mind the actual intent of these FTAs. I would therefore like to propose a review mechanism to be created to review the existing FTAs. This will be essential to assess the impact on domestic industry and suggest recommendations for amendments wherever these are required. As articulated in the 12th five-year plan, mechanization will play an important role in ensuring increase in farm productivity and accelerating agriculture growth. The approach will be to ensure appropriate mechanization that increases farm productivity, brings in savings on agri inputs, seeds, fertilizer, labor, etc. Custom hiring and adaptability to local needs is therefore imperative to overcome the challenges of shrinking farm sizes. Given the food security complex in India, it is important to ensure that the country moves onto a better food grain management platform, giving the private sector an equal opportunity. Hence, the role of the private sector in procurement, storage, and distribution of grains assumes importance. To be able to take this agenda forward, it will be important to create a continuing policy dialogue between the private players and the government to better understand the issues and together address the challenges in terms of rising food subsidy bill and ensuring food security for the masses. While PPP in infrastructure sector has been a success story. There is an overarching feeling now that PPP is at crossroads, with partnership being replaced by adversarial stance. CII has therefore made several recommendations in this regard, especially for setting up an independent PPP commission which has authority and jurisdiction to renegotiate the terms of the contract in the best interest of the country. Funding constraints are also impeding growth in the sector. It is critical to ensure that developers have access to low-cost funding. There is also a need to look at land acquisition, environmental and dispute resolution issues. The power sector has over the last few years been facing challenges on various fronts, the most critical one being acute fuel shortages, which has led to the creation of stranded assets. The sector is also facing financing constraints as banks have reached their exposure limits. Similarly, in the hydrocarbon space, the oil and gas exploration activity has slowed down considerably. This in conjunction with the coal shortages has led to increased reliance on imports to meet our energy needs and has adverse implications on energy security. It's critical to take measures to accelerate oil and gas exploration in the country and provide infrastructure status to this key sector. CII has constituted a task force on infrastructure monitoring and advocacy to monitor the implementation of projects of national importance. CII has advocated the creation of a new regulatory architecture to enable true independence of functioning of sectoral regulators. CII will also continue to advocate for coal sector and hydrocarbon sector reforms to alleviate fuel shortages and enhance the energy security of the country. With over 60% of our membership from MSMEs, we provide highest priority to help facilitate their growth and development. It is suggested that the compliance norms for MSMEs be based on the similar classification criteria as specified by the Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises. To mitigate the problem arising out of delayed payments, CII proposes leveraging the XBRL, Extension Business Reporting Language format of reporting for tracking payments to MSMEs and an effective use of factoring and third-party receivables management. It is recommended that the large industry that is purchasing from MSMEs may be entitled to avail a tax benefit subject to the transaction having been completed. A central climate-friendly technology fund needs to be set up to help MSMEs adopt climate-friendly technologies to enhance the self-reliance on energy and also be responsible towards the environment. With a view to address the availability of industrial infrastructure, a corporation or an SPV needs to be created which will hold the industrial land and building under its ownership. The MSMEs will use the facilities paying rent or a service charge for initial 7 to 10 years. This will actually address the issue of access for MSMEs on infrastructure. Now let me look at the other focus areas for this year. This is all about reforms and things like that. Coming to inclusive growth, CII has been actually very active in this area, and I'll talk about some of the things actually. CII has intervened towards upliftment of marginalized people, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, women, disabled, informal workforce, and backward geographies. The key thrust areas towards this have been access to opportunities for livelihood creation with a focus on education, skill development, rural entrepreneurship. Affordable access to healthcare, which includes disease prevention and healthcare services, and grassroots level development and mainstreaming of backward areas. Towards these objectives, CII has undertaken initiatives in the form of engaging in advocacy on development issues with members and the government, catalyzing structured CSR initiatives by corporates, and working with the government and multilateral institutions to strategically align development initiatives with UN's Millennium Development Goals. CI pioneered the skill development movement, well recognizing the fact that with limited natural resources and an increasing population, India's principal resource is its people. So CI adopted a set of guiding principles for skill initiatives: capacity building while ensuring quality, sustainable skill development programs, independent assessment and evaluation, focus on employability, global benchmarking. Now, some of the things we have done, for example, and some of the things we will go forward look at. Handhold 16 underperforming ITIs, 4 in each region. Out of the 390 industrial training institutes CI members have adopted since 2007, and so we'll continue to adopt 16 more underperforming ITIs in the year 2013-14. We'll look at 12 training the trainer programs with international partnerships and state governments. We'll pilot the recommendations on apprenticeship bill, facilitation of sector skills councils in beauty and wellness, manufacturing and chemicals. We already have facilitated sector skill council in the area of healthcare, banking and financial services and insurance, logistics and life sciences. Setting up 4 skill hubs in Keonjhar in Odisha, in the northeast in Digboy, Chennai, UP. We already have 3 skill hubs in Chindwara in Madhya Pradesh, Balasore in Odisha, and Bhiwadi in Rajasthan. These are already operational. 17 CII Pan-IIT Gurukuls to be set up in 2013 and 14. 13 Gurukuls are already functioning. Fielding candidates for the World Skills International Competition in 2013 to be held at Leipzig, Germany, in the 5 trades. Now, continuing on affirmative action, CII has been actively pursuing an affirmative action agenda since, CII has been working on education, employability, entrepreneurship, and employment to ensure all-round inclusion of marginalized section into the economic mainstream. There is a strong focus on education for SC/ST candidates. In 2012-13, CII and its member companies granted 32,000 scholarships for these candidates. This year, we plan to focus on offering scholarships to SC/ST youth in secondary education as well, while we continue to grant scholarships in higher education with increased vigor. In the area of skill development and vocational training, more than 41,000 SC/ST candidates have been trained in the year 2012-13. Skill development training programs have been initiated in 2 adopted districts, Navanshar and Cooch Behar, in the area of retail and hospitality. I talked about CII and Pan-IIT alumni in joint collaboration are setting up skill training centers on a residential Gurukul model. And the skills Gurukul are predominantly in the SC/ST dominated locations. 13 Gurukuls are already operational and will continue to increase these. To encourage entrepreneurship in marginalized sections, CII plans to increase the supplier diversity and set up or hold supplier diversity meets in all regions with the aim to increase business transaction between CII members and the Dalit entrepreneurs. This will also help to mentor and build networks for SC/ST entrepreneurs to enable them to leverage existing opportunities and simultaneously train and develop new entrepreneurs. Industry investment in R&D, innovation and design needs to increase significantly. Currently, the Indian industry's investment in R&D is very low. It's estimated to be around 0.3% of the GDP, compared to many nations, including China. Government wants to put many stimulants to raise this to 1% of GDP in the 12th 5-year plan. Therefore, there's a need to have an enabling policy framework to encourage investments in innovation and design. For instilling an innovation in the DNA of a company, CII has developed a framework, the Industrial Innovation Framework, which measures an industry's innovation readiness. It primarily establishes a process by integrating innovation into business strategy, developing internal innovation champions, maximizing competitiveness and market leadership, and enhancing the portfolio of new products, processes, and services. For investing in R&D, the industry can also tap Global Innovation and Technology Alliance, GITA. This is a joint venture between government and CII, which extends financial support in the form of soft loans or grants for R&D projects. In addition, industry-academia linkages also need to be enhanced. CII, in partnership with All India Council of Technical Education, has developed a framework to measure institutes' linkages with industry. CII intends to garner support from industry to sponsor cash awards for institutions which have strong industry linkages. These are awards which are given every year now. Moreover, to enable talented students to pursue PhD in industrial research, CII, in partnership with the Department of Science and Technology, has created a vehicle, the Prime Minister's Fellowship Scheme for doctoral research, in which PhD scholars will get double the scholarship, sponsored by DST and CII member companies. The Prime Minister conferred the first set of scholarships in January of this year. The number of patents filed by Indian companies in India is around 15 to 20% of the total filing. We need to improve this. The gap areas are awareness and capacity to manage IP. CII, in partnership with state governments and Ministry of MSME, established the technology centers and IP facilitation cells in Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, and Karnataka. And these cells help MSMEs and entrepreneurs in protecting their IP. We are also working with the government, both at the center and state level, to build a robust IP ecosystem covering protection, exploitation, and enforcement of IP befitting business and society. Entrepreneurs and startups are the future businesses of India, so we need to support them. CII, in partnership with the government and member companies, run a program called India Innovation Initiative, where innovations are scouted and connected to industry, incubators, and angel and VC funding agencies to help them. We are planning to create a platform for India startups in CII to support them. Coming to transformation, this is one of the 4 pillars. This year we would be starting a 3-year project called Project Village Buddha, which will be targeting to take the idea of Kaizen, which is small improvements implemented continuously, and enable implementation in a village environment. The objective would be to help the earning power of people in the village through a structured program for large, medium, and small companies from all sectors. This year we would pilot the program in target villages. Next year we would develop the program for developing business champions for the social sector in big companies. The Visionary Leaders of Manufacturing Program, VLFM, would reach out and cross 1,000 mark this year. Currently, this is at around 880. The program is creating a transformation of more than 100 manufacturing companies. These create visionary leaders who are embedded within these companies. Similarly, the Golden Top 100 SMEs is a new program which would be designed along the lines of the Malaysian SME Cooperation Program, targeting selection of seriously committed SMEs and take them through a structured program to help them become contributors to Indian SME growth. The 1000 SME project would aim to develop a win-win relationship amongst OEMs and Tier 1 and Tier 2 companies. The project has already realized more than 230 companies through the unique program called Visionary SME Program. This is now being scaled up to take the number to cross 1,000 in the next 3 years. This program is held under the India-Japan Technical Collaboration Program, and this is targeted also towards engaging MSMEs in the defense sector. CII has been supporting a national vision that seeks to see India a developed nation in global leadership role by 2012, India at 75. 2022, India at 75. To achieve this vision, CII has worked on some key interventions in areas including skill development, urbanization, creation of a backbone implementation network. This will now be part of our transformation agenda. In the area of skills, CII has developed Skillpedia, an IT platform to bridge the demand-supply gap of skills besides being one-stop shop for skills. We have also organized skill business plan competitions jointly with the National Skill Development Council for the last 2 years to sensitize youth on the business opportunity in this sector. In urbanization, I've been personally involved in the creation of City Connect platform in cities across India to provide an autonomous platform for local delivery, to collaborate and participate in planned and systematic urbanization of their respective cities. We are also working on indexing approximately 441 Class 1 Indian cities on 12 parameters. The indexing is intended to create traction for participative development with provision of gap analysis and technology-driven solutions. There is a pro bono program which aims to leverage the business talents of professionals and corporations in India to work with non-profit organizations on areas that can help improve their internal capacity and organizational functioning. CII through its India at 75 initiative will also be working with the Planning Commission on India Backbone Implementation Network for generating consensus amongst diverse stakeholders. IBIN will also work on bridging the gaps identified by various agencies in the delivery system, thus endeavoring to improve efficiency of the implementation process. You will hear more about IBIN on 19th. We have also connected with the Macquarie University, which has committed 11 million Australian dollars for grant of PhD scholarships to 55 scholars who will undertake research in areas aligned to the India at 75 vision. The last two items, sustainability and global engagement. Sustainability has become a cornerstone for India's development given the challenge of a growing population, the issues related to climate change and lack of infrastructure. Some of the key initiatives in this space that we have taken include the launch of the GreenCo rating, the first of its kind in the world. The GreenCo rates companies in the environmental friendliness of their activities and products and suggests the way forward in pursuing a green path. About 6 companies have been rated and more than 50 companies are working on this rating. CII is spreading the green building movement. Today, India has over 1,980 registered green building projects, accounting to over 1.38 billion square feet of green building footprint. There is also a need to focus on promoting green cities, green homes, green landscaping, green existing building. How do you convert an existing building to a green building? CII and the World Resources Institute, WRI, have reached India's first green power market development group to scale up Indian green energy markets and enabling corporate buyers to access reliable and clean energy and diversify their energy portfolio with green power. This, in fact, is an initiative in Bangalore. Another initiative, Project Speed, aims to provide affordable green energy to rural India with mobile towers serving as anchor loads. Under this initiative, more than 50 commercial pilots will be set up in the country over the next 2 years. In 2012, CII has released a report on Tamil Nadu's carbon footprint. This report has estimated the baseline emissions for Tamil Nadu in 2009-10 and highlighted the broad opportunities for emission reduction. This year, CII will undertake similar studies in other states, including Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, and West Bengal. CII has a key role in conservation, and CII, in partnership with the International Union for Conservation of Nature, will be launching Leaders for Nature Network in India. CII also intends to launch a sustainability label, which will provide consumers information on the sustainability performance of a company. On the global front, CII undertakes activities to connect Indian business with global businesses, policymakers, and other relevant stakeholders. We stay engaged. To address the issue of widening current account deficit, CII, along with the Government of India, will work on a three-pronged strategy comprising export promotion, particularly to emerging markets like Latin America, ASEAN, Africa, and CIS countries, strengthening the import competing sector through greater focus on manufacturing and FDI inflow. CII will also help industry to make use of existing FTAs to their advantage and integrate into regional global value chains. We intend to focus on the key areas of sourcing raw materials, energy, and food security and external trade enhancement. During the year, we will deepen our engagement with emerging markets of Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Africa. We will revive the engagement with traditional markets. Multilateral fora for enhancing India's international trade relations are important. Hence, CII will engage more effectively with forums like ADB, B20, the OECD, Bangladesh, India, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Economic Cooperation, the BIMSTEC, and then the BRICS, the Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, India, Brazil, South Africa, World Bank, WTO. So there's a various fora where CII has been actively engaged and will continue to engage. So you will see that the agenda is vast, but we believe that given the task ahead, given the need to look at accelerating economic growth, given that we need to look at all sectors, manufacturing, services, agriculture, given that we need to look at inclusive growth, the agenda has to be large. In summary, CII will look at easing the monetary policy, making the cost of credit reasonable, and providing adequate liquidity in the market. We will set up a task force to recommend strategies to improve business regulations in India, improve the ease of doing business. CII will monitor the implementation and undertake advocacy for infrastructure projects of national importance. We will continue reforms, advocacy policy on implementation of GST. We will continue to engage with government and political parties on foreign direct investment in critical sectors. We will set up a task force to coordinate and monitor state reforms. We will help transform 100 SMEs, 25 in each region, to mid-size and large companies. We will launch a campaign for sustainability through the Green Company Project. We will also set up 3 sector skills councils, 4 skill hubs, and 17 CII Pan-IIT skill gurukuls. This is in terms of inclusive growth. Thank you very much.